I can just jump in. Bruce Greenlight, city's manager president. And yes, it would be an investment by the city's resources. You were correct in to call it not a city obligation just because it's valuable. And it's your tax dollars that are paying for it. It's not their money. I know that, and the council knows that, but I just wanted to let you know that I agree 100% with how you characterized it. And we have to be upfront about it. It is what it is. And well, they were running for us. When it gets right, but it looked like more than just people.
That's what I thought. Well, I was wondering because I saw putting down on stuff. When you saw me did the yeah, they got stuff correct everything. Yeah. Every corner always have to start.
South of this side on the opposite side.
Final prediction, where you walk out.
That sounds good. Okay. Yeah, but I was
Oh yeah. Walks back on walks back in with a chainsaw. Then it goes to the unveiling. And then you have the chainsaw.
We've got a meeting in here next. If we can take it out to the lobby, that would be great.
I don't know. That's why I bring it up to
No charge. I would have liked to go to game 6.
Okay. Thus begins the Community Development Committee meeting. Let's just get right into it. First action item, we've got Herald Corner TIF District. Martin is going to walk us through it. So Martin, if you will.
Thank you. The first two items are both related to the property at 7080 Martway, which is, as you know, owned by the city. Although they're not necessarily related, but they do build on each other. The first item is an ordinance that would officially create a TIF redevelopment district at the property at the 7080 Martway site. As you know, the city has a contract with a developer, Brinshore Development, for eventual construction of a 32-unit senior housing project at the site. That project is contingent on a number of things happening, and those are first, award of low-income housing tax credits by the state of Kansas. Second, obviously approval of development plans by the Planning Commission and the City Council, and then also consideration and eventual approval of certain city incentives. Those would be TIF and IRB. So those are the things that have to happen for this project to move forward. At this point, probably the large step in those that we would be waiting on is the award of those low-income housing tax credits, and that will be in May. The agreement does say that the city council will consider the establishment or the partnership into a TIF partnership with a developer. And as you know, there are a number of steps that have to be taken by the city and the Planning Commission in order to formally start a TIF redevelopment or approve a project plan. Two-step process. The first one is the formal approval of a district itself. And once that is in place, then at a later time comes the consideration and the approval of a project plan. The district does not have to be project specific, is not necessarily bound to a project. The project plan at a later phase would be. According to state law, there are certain criteria that have to be met in order for a TIF conservation district to be approved, and those were included both in a memo that you received from the developer, and also we had some discussion of that in the action item summary. So essentially, it does very easily qualify as a TIF conservation area. Is a finding from the developer, and Pete Heaven with Lake District Engage and I have reviewed those, and we concur with the finding of the developer. It is a building that's been empty for a long time, and it's in very poor condition, so it very easily meets that criteria. The ordinance that would be before you would have you as a city council officially finding that it meets the intent of the law and qualifies as a district. So with that, I think I'll just stop. I'll take any questions, but just as a reminder, just because the TIF district is formally adopted, it doesn't necessarily mean if Brinshore for some reason were to go away in the future, another developer would be able to benefit from this district once it's created. As a final note, the council had asked for, was interested in moving quickly towards demolition of the building on site. I will point out that if the building is demolished, or once that building is demolished, it does become quite a bit harder to get the TIF district created because it doesn't meet the law so cleanly about having an old vacant building on site. So with that, I'll stop. I don't know, Pete, if there's anything you think I left out you'd like to add, or we'll take questions.
Again, this is not project specific, it's just the creation of the district, which then qualifies for TIF financing in the future if the development plan is brought forward and you agree. So it's just creation of the district itself.
What if there's not a development, we don't want the district anymore, how hard is it to kind of undistrict it?
Simple majority of the council can dissolve the TIF district. Once vertical construction starts, or even infrastructure, it's too late. But as long as it's still vacant.
Anybody else? Any questions? Okay. So we ready to move forward? Take it. Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Martin.
You're welcome.
Moving on to number 2, we're talking about 7080 Martway building demolition contract. I think John is in attendance. Maybe.
Right in front of
you. So far away.
We're discombobulated by this setup.
Yeah, we're all too far away. Following up on Martin's presentation, on October 28th, we held a bid opening for the demolition and abatement of the building at 7080 Martway. Midland Wrecking was the lowest bidder at $88,565. The initial estimate The abatement and demolition cost was $110,000. If this moves forward, the city would enter into a contract with Midland Wrecking and to demolish the building. Brinshore would deposit a 50% earnest money of the total demolition cost. If the project fails to move forward, 25% of that is non-refundable. So if that development happened to not move forward, we would bear 75% of those demolition costs.
So it's not 25% of the 50% earnest money, it's 25% of the total demolition.
half of the.
Correct. So what would happen is they deposit 50% of the demolition cost. If the project fails to move forward, they get 25% back. 25% of that 50% is non-refundable.
It's about $12,000.
Do we have any concerns with the different, because it's such a big difference between the lowest bidder and the next highest bidder?
We don't.
We have an existing relationship, right?
We do.
Yeah.
They've done a lot of work for us in the past. It's just logistics, basically. They're close. They have a close dump site. They're all kind of readily available. So.
Question. Anybody else?
No, but before we leave this topic, I have a couple questions I want to go back on real quickly. And I apologize for delaying anything, but I need to keep clear. We've gone through this Brinshore project for several months now. I need to understand where we currently are. What's the relationship between the city and Brinshore right now? What's the relationship between Brinshore and the state and any kind of funding they planned on getting and the current design? Could you just briefly tell me where we are on all those things?
Yeah, I can handle that one. We're currently under contract to sell the property to Brinshore. The condition to the closing is that they receive tax credits. They went through the first round last May, and they were not awarded any credits. They believe that they'll score more positively in the next leg, which is in May of 15. So the council extended the contingency on the contract through May of 15. If, in fact, they get the tax credits, I think we've already approved the design, haven't we?
No, it hasn't
I
gone
guess
to the
that's
planning
right, we
commission
haven't
yet.
got a development plan yet. But it would be for senior housing.
Low income senior housing.
There would be an income requirement, yes.
Mm-hmm.
But we haven't approved that yet.
Well, when we had our individual discussions with the developer, a couple of us told them we were not interested in the design. It wasn't the theory or the concept of what it was, but the design was.
And that's fair game. That's fair game. We have not approved
But I'm
that.
not seeing anything come back. I guess is that.
They're going to wait until they get the tax credits before they
Okay.
do the final designs.
Okay, all right.
But yeah, you'll be able to do as you wish with those designs.
They're still going for 9%, or they're going for 4% lifetime?
I don't know. Do you know, Mark? I think it's
Percent tax credits.
9% versus 4%?
It's a competitive 9%.
It's a 9%, okay.
Pete, could you review real quick again what that property cost us, what they're paying for it, how this demolition affects the price? We did something else to affect the price, just on paper only. If you could review that.
I'm sorry, but I'll have an answer for you. I'll make it up.
And I can probably come a little bit closer to making it up. And again, this is just a demo. This before you this evening is an award of a contract for the contractor to demolish a city-owned building. Okay, so it's simple as that. There is an agreement with another developer that because they're interested in developing this site, they would reimburse us a portion of the project if the project doesn't move forward, or all of the demolition if it doesn't move forward. I believe the contract that we have with a developer is combination land price and fees for
About $143,000 in fees.
And fees, and combination is $283,000. That sales price and fees price gets adjusted or increased the amount of the demolition cost goes up. So it'll be $283 plus $88,000. So we would incur these costs, $88,000, and then once it closes, we get that money back through the sale of the property.
Okay, so we got the acquisition and the, so it's the 143, the 140, and then not the 95 in the original because it didn't cost us that much.
Right.
Okay. That's what I was thinking, but I wanted to make sure. Thank you.
And one thing only, as of course, things would progress. In the last week to 10 days, we've been approached, and I think Todd's aware of this, Martin had a conversation. We've had another party, right?
I didn't get to touch base with them, but Danielle did, so good.
Okay, there we go. That had approached the city and inquired about purchasing the property, and they were advised that the property was under contract, and that we were not, just that the property was under contract. They were interested in a reuse of the building. And so we said if we presented the demolition contract, we would simply state that. The only thing that would impact is the timing of proceeding with the demolition.
So they're interested in reusing the existing building that's there, which is not going to be in play. Are they still interested in constructing something on that property later?
No, your reuse of the existing building, as we understand it.
They can reuse that building?
If you don't demo it.
Theoretically. Still
So
standing.
they have no interest in the property if the building were to be demolished.
So the issue is, do you demo now and eliminate that possibility if Brinshore does not close because it doesn't get its tax credits? Or do you, you can leave it in place and demo it when Brinshore pulls the trigger on the contract and says, we waive our contingencies, we're ready to close, or you could demo it today. And the only difference is you would eliminate this potential buyer, you know nothing about them, they said they wanted the building. And I suppose if Brinshore decided not to close, then we would be losing a potential prospect. But we haven't vetted that prospect, we haven't spoken to them, they just said we want the building, and we said we can't have it.
So what's our next step with this third party?
Nothing.
Nothing until we...
We're under contract with Brinshore. So we can demo the building today, or we can wait until Brinshore decides yes or no on its contract. So totally up to you.
Can we have that bid will stay the same between now and...
We could ask the question.
We could ask the question, but if you push it 6 months, I mean, it.
Yeah, generally it's like 30 to 60 days.
We can ask the question.
How long is this
Well,
building?
then the next council meeting.
How long is this
Once we
building?
do that vote, it's approved, then we can go ahead with the demolition.
Yeah, it's important that the building remain, and that's a good question, Pat. It's important we leave the building intact on the property until after we have our hearing on the creation of the TIF district, because the building in large part qualifies the property for TIF. Then you can knock it.
Okay.
And it also increases the value of, no, it doesn't. It decreases the value of the property if you demolish it and the property value goes up.
And there's also a counter argument that with building up, the property is worth less than if there was no building on it. So it's kind of depends.
Right.
Okay, David.
And this building is set vacant, empty, for sale for how many years?
I believe 2006.
8 years.
8 years. In the 11th plus hour, some third party that maybe, I'm sure it's reputable, but we've done very little vetting on. And again, if, as I've said 1,000 times, if this was privately owned, the city didn't own it, it'd been torn down 2 years ago. So, I mean, I have no interest, personally speaking, I have no interest in betting on the come that, you know, Brinshore fails to secure tax credits, and then these folks are still hanging around to potentially make an investment. I think what it tells me is they may have done a wave top, dive into this building, but to truly get inside this building to see what we've seen and know what we know, to repurpose it, look, I'm no real estate expert, but I don't see it, so it doesn't sway my decision. I think we move forward with demolition.
And I think staff's recommendation is still immediate demolition, but we also have a duty to bring things like this to the council so that you understand what's going on in the market.
Yeah, that's what the liability. Yeah.
Any other questions? Take it to council.
Want to consent agenda?
No. No.
Okay, that brings us to our third action item. Resolution accepting Johnson Drive Parking Task Force recommendations, and Emily is going to share with us tonight.
So, hi Emily. So this is your second pass at this. In October, the Parking Task Force presented their recommendations to you. And we wanted to build off of that and provide additional detail to the non-task force members who are along the district that would be impacted, and also give you some time to sit with it a bit. And so this is your second pass at it. We're bringing the recommendations of the task force to you in the form of a resolution that acknowledges their work and also moves the entirety of their recommendations forward. And the next step of that is the ordinance that would be in place for the 2-hour meeting, which would be the following agenda item. But this is just exactly what you saw in terms of the recommendations from the group in October, which is another pass, but it's a form of a resolution.
Thank you. Pretty straightforward.
Has anybody heard feedback since the October committee meeting, or no?
I think it's great. Good job, guys.
Yeah.
It's an excellent job.
Good job.
I was so impressed.
See, the group worked hard, I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
And it was a diverse group. I mean, we had folks that RC and I had to make sure didn't sit next to each other, because I mean, you literally have folks sitting around that table that are not friends. And but in the end, where they all came to was, I think, common ground, some real practical recommendations, I think, to make the district better. So, and I didn't say this, last month, but Emily, I mean, she's a rock star. She gets a ton of the credit for how effective I think the task force was. She did a great job. So,
thank you.
Really good job. I was just gonna ask quick, the recommendations, you guys had quite a few recommendations, and I know that this first step is just the ordinance for the parking signs, or the ordinance to limit the parking during certain periods of time.
Well, we're actually not quite there. We're still in the resolution, accepting just the recommendations.
Accepting that. Okay. Okay.
But I know where you're going.
Okay. You okay? Like it.
I'll be coming up real soon.
That's where we're. Okay. Thank you, Emily. Any other questions for Emily? I think we could probably go ahead and put this on consent.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do we want it on consent, or do we want to discuss it out loud in the council meeting?
I think that would be discussed out loud.
I do too.
Okay.
I would
We
put this
put
on
it on
consent. I
consent.
think this is a great thing. I think it's a big change for our community. So I think to talk about it and give a summary of it is a good idea.
That's a
And
good
the
call.
senior chair and the co-chair make the motions and second it.
Thank you, Amy.
I just want to hear you talk.
Touché. Okay, moving to number 4, dovetail, I think, where Jennifer's wanting to go. Now we're talking about the ordinance amending Chapter 320, specifically with the parking regulations, and Glen is going to talk about this for us.
Correct. So this actually, a little bit misleading. This doesn't actually do anything to enable 2-hour parking on Johnson Drive. We already have that authority in the standard traffic ordinance that pretty much every Kansas municipality passes every year. And all that ordinance says is, if we put up a sign, it's legal, we can ticket you if you don't listen to it. Now, at some point, there was an ordinance put into our city code that has a very partial and incomplete list of the parking regulations in effect within the city. We don't think that needs to be there. A couple other cities we reached out to do not have such a schedule, and we just think it would be kind of burdensome and misleading to try and maintain that. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. So all this does is effectively repeal that part of the municipal code, just puts in a bit of boilerplate language that says limited time parking is going to be enforced like it says in the Kansas standard traffic ordinance. So we would take the previous resolution passing as just directing staff to put those signs up and enforce that. Pretty straightforward.
Jennifer, does that answer your question?
Yeah, I guess I'm down the road on the rest of the task force, like the alternate parking and what we're going to do to fix that up so it's usable and findable, and the brochures and the maps and the signage. So I did not know when that was gonna really be looked at and when we were gonna find a budget for that. That's pretty important stuff, so I just didn't.
Yeah, some of that is kind of, was even in the works, you know, while we were talking with the task force in terms of brainstorming or pricing some things, or even just kind of talking some ideas around with the people in the district. And I think the focus right now is wrapping up on the actual construction of Johnson Drive and initialize, you know, getting this initial 2-hour parking limit in, and then the rest of the conversations can flow really well after that, and would do with the budget discussions as well. So I think they're all top of mind and bubbling kind of under, and the publicity that we've given the recommendations all get kind of everybody talking a little bit, which is helpful too, so we can kind of think about what makes most sense. But I think you'll see movement on them after the first of the year, especially once we move past the construction stage and get this first step of the 2 hours.
We'll have some recommendations and some prices and stuff that we can go through.
And the nice thing is that we can take each recommendation independently. So if the time presents itself for something, which is, you know, a real window of opportunity for one of the or the other of the items, we can move on those just as soon as you like, or as we present them to you. So.
That'd be great. Thank you.
So this is probably a historical item, but why do we limit parking on Lamar? Like, why is it limited between 7 and 9 and 4 to 6? So, I mean, I get those are standard rush hour, but I mean, is there?
Yes.
Just because I'll just say I routinely get complaints from neighbors and like the cable guy, and everybody comes to my house is like, everybody hates to come here because they can't park on Lamar. And I'm like, well, you actually can between
now we know.
9 and 4. But I mean, it is a humongous hassle for people to service people along that corridor. And it's a very wide street.
I know the answer.
Well, and I think, let me interrupt there first just a minute, Scott, if I might. Glenn, I think we didn't include in the packet the discussion item from 2 years ago.
Correct.
Do you have a minute, can you just pull that up and look? I don't
Sure.
recall specifically. So when we put those restrictions in place and adopted that ordinance in the past, we can share with you that.
So can we get rid of it? Can we make it not, seriously, I just want to really, I would love to know from a public safety perspective, I would love to know from a legal perspective.
My family's lived on Lamar since '64. I know the answer to this. The answer is, we've had 4 cars hit, rear-ended, that were parked in front of our house. After the 4th one, the city made it no parking between those hours.
I think when I first lived on Lamar, it wasn't quite this long. It was shorter time frames, and I think it made it longer time frames since I've lived there in the 18 years I've lived on Lamar.
Well, it is nice to know though, because I've had people with garage sales and stuff, and they've had to actually they've not allowed people to park there during the day at all. So I can actually tell people, yes, you can. The police can't kick you off, because between those times it's fair game. So it's.
For a while, it was no parking at any time.
Mm-hmm.
Dan, any kind comments?
In my opinion, I don't have a problem so much with people parking on Lamar. My biggest problem is going to get a fire truck down the street. People are parking on both sides of the street. It's true that some cars have been rear-ended on Lamar, but there's other streets where they're smaller and cars get rear-ended. Lamar is a heavily traveled road. So that's one thing I would keep in mind is parking cars on a heavily traveled road. You're going to have that.
Let's just have parking on the west side of Lamar.
No. Yeah, let's just have it on the east side of
But I think the answer to that question is, I mean, you can look at parking regulations anywhere in the city and have that conversation or discussion, and we can bring you whatever relevant public safety information and all that. So if that's something we want to put on a future agenda, we can certainly do that.
No need to. I was just.
Sure.
I'm positive.
Okay.
I don't park on Lamar. I'm like, pull on the sidewalk, park on the sidewalk for all I care.
You know people.
I know.
It doesn't get me anywhere, like help with getting into my home, but.
You know people.
Anybody else have any questions? Okay, thank you, Glenn.
Thank you.
So
the restrictions actually say the hours, not the statute number, right?
Right. 8 to 6, Monday to Saturday. Yeah.
we're moving that forward. Consent?
I think this can go
I
on
think
consent. Do you think it'll be confusing for people?
No.
I think
Okay.
consent's fine.
Okay, consent.
Just call it over. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, that brings us to our 5th action item, which is Operation Greenlight Interlocal Agreement.
Just let's take it to
Sorry?
You good?
go.
Oh, okay, well, I'm going to let John speak for a second or
Just
two.
a-
Steal your thunder.
No sweat. Just a little bit of background on Operation Greenlight. In Mission, we have 3 Operation Greenlight signals. They're all along Shawnee Mission Parkway, Rivarola Drive, Dahl, and Lamar. Basically, this is a region-wide thing on Shawnee Mission Parkway to keep traffic flowing the way it needs to at peak times. Also improves air quality along with a multitude of other things. Operation Greenlight's been a good thing with the reconfiguration at Null, when we did the Null project along with Operation Greenlight. Accidents at that intersection have gone down 100%. It went from 21 year to 100, or from 21 year to 10 the next. So it's really been a good tool to have. This interlocal is for $2,200 a year for operations of the system, and we will pay for that out of our traffic signal maintenance line item in public works.
Great. Anybody have any questions for John?
Consent.
Consent?
Yes. Good job, John.
Okay, thank you, John.
Good job.
And that brings us to our discussion item. It's hard to believe, but we're talking about the snow plan for 2014-15.
I heard we're supposed to have a foot of snow before Thanksgiving.
And John has his snowplow jacket on, so.
Nice, he does.
Yes, he does.
Hey, John, you're up.
Sorry.
I know.
Blame CDC Meeting. Our snow plan has been included in your packets. It's pretty much the same. I would say that it's pretty much our standard operating procedure. The biggest item in there that I would probably draw everyone's attention to is the removal of snow from Johnson Drive. It's going to be a little bit of a learning curve probably for everybody this year. As in the past, we are responsible for the on-street parking. Adjacent property owners are still responsible for the sidewalks. We're going to approach it like we've approached it in the past. Basically, we will remove the snow to each end of the parking until it accumulates to a point where it impedes side or begins impeding a lot of parking, and then we'll haul it off to the lot on outlook. Like I said, it will probably be a little bit of a learning curve. We may be hauling off more than we have in the past, but we'll deal with that as we go. But we've got an initial plan in place, and we'll see how that works for us, and we'll tweak it from there. If you guys have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Like I said, it's pretty straightforward to what we've done in years past. We'll have four crew members on each crew, rotating shifts, day, night, 7 to 7. Pretty much the same as we've had in the past.
Thank you.
53rd Street first, then Lamar.
No haven.
Amy?
Lamar is the best street in the whole northeast of Johnson County. I'm telling you, I can never figure out what the streets are going to be like by looking out my window. It's amazing.
It's really not a question. It's more of a statement.
But I do have a question.
Yeah,
I have
go
two
for it.
questions.
Go for it.
Number one, you made a comment that there could be more removal of snow than in the past. So with the widening of the sidewalks, isn't the street space just a little bit smaller than it has been in past years? Or
It
not
may
the
be,
same?
like I said, it'll be a little bit of a learning curve for us. We're going to try to use as much space as we can, but we don't want to let snow accumulate to the point where we're burying stuff, things are getting damaged.
Well, we're dealing with landscaping
Right.
in areas that haven't been landscaped before, so we want to be conscious of, not
Try to
killing
keep
that
it off
every
the
year.
plants.
Dumping
not-
on, I get it, yeah. And my other question is, so we did widen the sidewalks, so
Correct.
there could be the reason that some property owners might have a little bit more snow sidewalk shoveling to do than they have in the past.
To that end, since we own from building line to building line, is there any confusion from your perspective on what the responsibilities of the property owners are? And is it worth, before our first snowfall, to revisit that and say, we own building line to building line, but as a reminder, this is what we're going to do, here's what you agreed to do if you have any questions, so
sure.
maybe post that online as well, but maybe a letter to those folks.
Sure.
Maybe send a letter, or call people, or talk to people, like we did about Johnson Drive.
Emily likes walking up Johnson Drive.
Yeah, I won't know what to do. No, and we talked a little bit about it with them, but there needs to be a full-on effort, and there's lots of questions too about landscaping, and we're working on that. But I think real effort.
That's good.
Can I ask a question? Are you going to leave the color strips on that little lip that goes up the sidewalk, like by Sandy's business, by Twisted Sisters and the gun shop and all that? There's that little bitty lift on the
stair.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to leave a color strip or something for people?
No, it's not. It hasn't initially been designed that way. But what we did is we went back through and we measured up handrails for those steps. The reason we did that is it gives somebody a visual that, hey, there's something here, and it also helps. I always look at my granddad. He always needs something to hold on to when he navigates steps. So I think that that's really important to be able to have everybody be able to navigate all that. And like I said, it gives you that visual.
The only problem with that is that's in one distinct place, and the strip goes all the way across.
Yeah, and if it's something we need to revisit later, if people are having problems, we can definitely look into that. My biggest fear was to say, if it does snow, the steps covered up. And if you have something that's actually sticking up saying that something's there, it kind of says, okay, there's a handrail here. So
right now you've got pink and green strips, and I was there today, and I knew it was coming, but I looked at the strip and that helped. I didn't trip or anything. I usually would. I didn't.
But yeah, if we have issues with it, we'll definitely look into something to put more hand on that issue.
Let's talk about the landscape. There's going to be water and stuff. Like we're going to have to do it manually by hand.
Water truck.
Are we going to get a water truck at like Miriam and one outside?
We have one.
So does that mean we get
John and Martha arm wrestling for that, but that'll be, as we come back and we get the streetlights in, and there's going to be opportunities for banners and other sorts of decorative things that come down the street, so. Yes.
Yes. John.
And flags.
Yes, sir.
Since you were talking about the parking on Lamar a little while ago, is there any kind of an they can park during certain hours, is there emergency snow?
Yes. There are two ways. There are two ways that gets triggered for people to not park on the street. One is an accumulation of 4 inches or more. The other is the mayor designates it as a snow route.
But it's already a snow route, so it falls within the standard Kansas.
As far as Lamar?
Or is Johnson Drive not a snow route?
Talking about
Lamar is.
Lamar is. Oh yeah, I know Lamar is. That's why it is.
It makes our job really fun when we're like
zigzagging around parked cars.
The best one's when somebody parks right across the street from somebody else.
That's lovely.
So we have to like shoot the gap, which
and
is very fun.
Yeah, but you're the boss. That's what you
I do want to, and this isn't snow plane related, but it's a good opportunity to just point out and give some kudos to John and Emily about working. They've spent a lot of time, we all know that, but we had some folks, some customers down on Johnson Drive who had some questions about handicap parking, right? And we had met the requirements for handicap parking throughout the project, but there happened to be one block in front of Firewalk, right, where there wasn't a specific space there. And they spent time with both the citizens who brought the issues forward and the contractors, and it makes a lot of sense, and they really worked to resolve that and get a handicap space added in that block as well. So,
thank you, Diana.
Very good. We don't have any other questions? Well,
John, Steve, I'm sorry. I should have asked this before, Laura, because I'm not quite sure on the city, the engineering consulting fees for Brinshore work. I know it. It's all over in there. And I was wondering who's paying for that. Is that the 143 architecture and engineering 163? Is that in there? They're paying for those consulting fees and engineering consulting fees.
Plan review fees, yes, that's right.
Yeah, there's a plan review fee, the West Gateway plan review fee. I believe though in the contract that is waived, that has been waived. The $143,000 that's in the contract for sale does include and cover a lot of those.
So the city administration fee is where you're putting it.
Yeah.
So,
We agreed upon a number to compensate it in addition to the sales price of that property, and that was a number. We would normally have some fees for a project like that. They wouldn't get close to that number, so that's a larger number than what we would have if we put all the fees and send the bills for all the consultant time and all the legal fees that we would have. And I have a spreadsheet that could put together that outlines that if you'd like.
That would be great, because that really then is about that 143,500 isn't really part of the purchase price if we're going to spend it all on consultant fees.
We're not going to spend it all on consultant fees. A portion of that is a smaller portion of that, but there some of that will be spent, yes.
Because they definitely, every step of the way, they are in this contract to be guiding it and watching it. So, I mean, that can't be cheap. That's great if I can find that out. I appreciate that, Martin.
Okay.
Sorry, guys.
No, it's all right. Under other.
One more thing I want to add on the snow plan that I forgot about. We have an order of kind of how we attack things. You can see it on our maps as far as the streets go, as far as number 1, number 2, number 3 streets. And then we're also responsible for a lot of other things: parking lots, trails, school zone sidewalks, things of that nature. So we try to attack those in a certain order. If I could make everything clear at one time, we would absolutely do it. But you know, sometimes it'll take us some time to kind of get to those lower tiered ones. Say, you know, park trails, stuff like that. They kind of start falling down on the list, and typically we want to have those done 72 hours after the snow's over, because we want to, you know, make sure that we have the streets totally clear before we jump onto that stuff. So, in case you guys hear anything about something like that, typically that's our time frame. If anybody has any questions, we're more than happy to answer them, so you can send them to us. The other thing is I have to give kudos to every single person down at Public Works, because those guys come in and work so hard that no matter what time of the day, weekends, holidays, they were sitting here watching the Chiefs game last year because the snow was coming. So I could not be prouder. I wouldn't trade those guys for anything in the world. They do an excellent job. So,
John, the one problem we did have last year that we got a few complaints on was around Rushton, not being able to see when the kids were walking to school, walking around the snow mounds. Is that going to be resolved this year?
It was that one corner at Woodson and 52nd Street. What the guys are doing is, instead of windrowing it onto the sidewalk, what they can do is actually pick their plow up and push it past the sidewalk so that sidewalk stays open.
That'd be great. So it's resolved.
Right, we can address that. Hopefully it works. I mean, it worked kind of there on the tail end last year, and hopefully we have a winter like we had in 2012. We just don't have to worry about too much.
You need it to be cold enough for bugs to die.
Thank you.
I'll take cold, not a whole lot of snow.
Thank you, John.
Thanks, guys.
Just in case anybody didn't see it on the one-ton truck route, 61st place, dead end into old folks' home.
That's been written that way for years.
I know, I think it's old folks' home.
That's all Trey's fault.
We probably want to change that.
What's that?
We'll revise our.
Okay, bringing us to other items. I know Dave has something he'd like to talk about.
Yeah, so we received a note from Carl Casey from Casey's Auto Repair, and he has an interest. If you guys are familiar with Carl's shop, his building reworks, the building adjacent to him, not towards Johnson Drive, but away from Johnson Drive towards Martway, he would like to purchase and he'd like to expand his auto repair business. The challenge is that current zoning moratoriums prevent him from purchasing that property to expand his auto repair business. So what I would like you guys to be in agreement with me on is to direct staff to look at some options of, a menu of options perhaps that might allow us to amend some of this zoning text or code that would allow, maybe it's a one-time, maybe it's something that we have to apply across the whole corridor. I don't know enough about it to tell you what the options might look like, but I'd like the latitude to ask staff to come back to us to say, okay, this is what you would need to do if Carl was to purchase the building adjacent to him to expand Casey's auto repair.
That's in Ward 2, right?
Yeah.
Did Ward 2 get a letter?
Oh, Ward 2 did not get a letter unless it's, no. So, my question is, isn't there a standard protocol for this? I mean, what's our zoning board
That's a great question.
about, right? Like, isn't that the proper protocol to be following?
So I had coffee with Laura Smith this morning, I think as everybody has, and we covered a number of topics, including this one. And there's actually not, that's what makes this a little kind of a gray zone. And where Pete Hedden came down on it was he felt like it would require somebody on the council to raise it, almost kind of sponsor it and say, hey, are you in agreement that we should direct staff to do this? So I agree there's not really kind of a process with which to review this or to take it up. So that's one of the reasons why it's a little kind of out of left field or under the up.
Should there be a process that
I
people
think
follow?
Martin would be the best person.
This is it's a requirement or restriction that's in Title 4 of the Mission Municipal Code, it's our zoning ordinance. So it would require, we think, in order to address the question in a positive way for Mr. Casey, would require a zoning text amendment. And zoning text amendments are things that we do every now and then. But it does require it to go to the Planning Commission, have a public hearing, and then it's in an ordinance form, and that would get forwarded to the City Council for final action. So that's the process we follow. It's like a zoning application, except there's not an applicant that says I want to build this. In this case, the request would be an ordinance that would change a portion of our rules or what have you.
So the zoning's the same. I don't understand. I'm confused. Maybe it's me.
I don't know.
The zoning is the same where he is versus
it's that moratorium, Debbie, that talked about auto repair facilities couldn't be created.
He's a grandfather use.
Couldn't be expanded. And so because of the nuance of it's not really from a zoning perspective, as Mark described, more of a, hey, is this something that we're willing to take a look at? I don't know if we really know the answer to that until we know what staff researches it, comes back to us and says this is what the options may look like. Because if it requires a complete rewrite and it impacts hundreds of properties, it's probably not something that we're interested in. If there is a workaround that says, well, we might be able to adjust it this way or this way, it might be something that we can take a look at. So again, I would like for you guys to go along on this with me and just ask staff to explore this and bring it back to us and see if we can
see what the options are.
Just asking staff to give us some options and take a look at it.
Yeah, assuming you guys are in agreement with me,
right.
Because I don't want to direct them if you guys are saying, okay, that's a terrible.
So I'm not opposed to allowing business owners to expand. I'm not comfortable with it being brought to us in this avenue. I think there needs to be a process where these individual business owners go to staff and there's a process that's followed and then it's brought to council. I feel as though us saying, yeah, staff, go ahead and explore is a informal approval of this. And again, I'm not saying I don't approve it by any way, shape, or form. It just feels to me that this is not the proper way for things like this to be brought to the council. And if at any point in time another business owner came to us and asked the same thing and we're like, no, I feel like we're going to get in this, you're playing favorites versus not. So to me, I think there needs to be a standard process that's followed every single time. and we go through that route. And I, to be frank, I almost of the mind that we need to put that process in place first before moving forward with this one, but.
Well, it's a good comment, because yet we don't necessarily want to set a precedent unless we know exactly what's going on.
And I don't
why don't we
want
have staff look into giving us some ideas as far as the process?
And there is a process.
Okay, then Martin.
There is a process. What we can do is with the request, we can very easily come up with option 1, 2, or 3 of getting that allowed with different levels of impact, and that's written into an ordinance form, and that goes to the Planning Commission for them to look at, and the Planning Commission can do a number of things. Planning Commission can study it, remand it for further study, can recommend denial of all the ordinances or some of them, and forward that to the City Council. There is a process. What this would do, if I understand the request from the Councilman Shepherd, is that we would get going on that and take it through the Planning Commission for the start of the process.
Okay. So can we, I guess I just need the official statement that in the future, the proper way to handle this is to hand it off to staff immediately and let you guys follow the process versus coming to us first and
Let's be
asking.
clear, this started with staff. The staff involved me in the conversation and said, we need somebody to bring this up during the committee meeting to start this process. So I feel like
I don't disagree with you, but there's
So
a
there's not,
disconnect
in
here.
many cases, you can have a property owner who can file an application. And those applications for whatever the issues are, rezoning, things like that, would go directly to the Planning Commission. In this instance, because it is a zoning code or text amendment, those are initiated at the request of the Planning Commission or the City Council. So we were approached by a property owner. In order to move that forward into the process, we need to have that conversation with you as a council to say, would you like to ask us to begin that, to get it in front of the Planning Commission?
So it went through the
that
proper
really is
procedure.
yes.
Because you're saying
Does that
that
make
a
sense?
citizen on their own can't request an amendment to
A citizen on their own cannot request an amendment to the zoning code.
The Planning Commission and the Council.
Well, I mean, a request to the Planning Commission, a citizen can't do that. An amendment to the
Could Carl have taken this directly to the Planning Commission is what we're asking?
The ordinance would have to come, a request from the Planning Commission or the City Council per our code.
So you guys, they come to you and you guys make sure
You
that
can
it goes
change the
through the
code.
proper.
You have to go
Let's
through
change
this
the
process.
code. Let's change the code.
You guys just did it fine because it went through the proper channels. It's a done deal, and
Well, there's no done deal about anything.
I mean, I think all we're doing is just getting it started.
Yeah.
right. But I mean, it's a done deal to get it started because it did go through the proper channels, right?
I think so.
Yeah, I would just be interested in changing the code. And just-
Because here's the thing too, right? So I mean, if this was, Carl said, I have an interest in, expanding and creating a theme park,
It has to go to the Planning Commission first.
All I'm saying is you wouldn't have Dave Shepherd sitting in front of you saying, hey, I think we ought to direct staff to do this, right? So it still requires, whether it's Planning Commission or somebody on the City Council for our code, they'll also review this and have some judgment about it and say, okay, I'll stand up and support that or get behind that, right?
Right, I guess what I'm proposing is we change the code so that it goes to staff. Staff uses it, looks at it, and then determines whether or not it needs to move forward in the process, and then it goes to the Planning Commission. So, Jim, I'm interested in, you're over there shaking your head no. Just because you're on the Planning Commission, I don't mean to call you out, and you don't, but I'm just interested in your opinion on this. If you don't
Maybe I
mind.
speak freely? Sure. You do not want, in my opinion, to set the precedents where the public goes directly to your staff. If somebody in your ward comes to you and says, hey, I've got this idea, but some of our ordinances are restricting me from doing it, I think it's absolutely the proper thing for the council person to bring it to staff and say, can we look at it? Or somebody on the Planning Commission to bring it to staff and say, hey, can we take a look at this? Is this a possibility? Why are we doing it the way we're doing it now? What's the history on it? I just don't think it's the proper thing for patrons to come directly to staff. It's our job to give staff direction and not necessarily the public to take it directly to. It should be sponsored by somebody that's either in an elected or appointed position.
I
Just my-
appreciate, no, thank
that's
you
my
very much,
thing.
I
Yeah,
appreciate that
thank-
perspective.
thank
That
you,
makes a
Jen.
lot of sense.
And just one caveat.
Yeah.
Expanse doesn't mean up, it means over, right?
That's right.
Okay.
That's
Well,
right.
it could be both.
And I mean, I think we're a long ways from knowing
Yeah, we're just
what that
looking at
looks
it.
like. Again, just trying to find out even the acquisition of the property, let alone what it may end up looking like, because there's a whole other process to that, right? So, anyway, I think it's a good conversation, and I appreciate the general agreement around the table to have staff take a look at it, and bring it back to us with some thoughts, assuming we're not misreading anybody.
So does the process, the part I'm concerned, the part I have a concern about is we brought it up in a public meeting, we've talked about it, nobody's like, no, you know what I mean, and then we get further down the road and maybe the council votes no, right? So was it necessary to bring it up? I'm just asking a procedural question. Was it necessary to bring it up in front of us all and get general consensus, or could Councilmember Shepherd just simply say, hey staff, have a look at this, I'm quote unquote sponsoring this? I mean, did we have to?
Right, I had that same conversation during coffee this morning, and the way it was, the way that was answered to me was, it's absolutely necessary to bring it up in a public setting, and to get general agreement from the council before staff's directed to start looking at options.
I mean, the code says city council, not a city council person or planning commission, and so I think our feeling is that.
So to your point, maybe the code is a little vague, and maybe that's why, making sausage
What's the
isn't
purpose
always.
of it then? What, I don't understand the purpose.
Well,
I think it, from my perspective, I don't mean to speak for staff, but I think it's, look, I mean, I think staff can give out no's on demand. I think yeses take a whole lot longer. And I think that if you're going to consider something like this that requires an amendment to existing zoning text or code, then somebody who, as Jim said, is either an elected or an appointed position ought to feel strongly enough about it to be able to stand in front of his council colleagues and say, hey, this is something that I think we ought to take a look at. On the surface, it shows up as a no, but I think there's enough merit here. Let's have them research it and come back to us with some options. Because again, it's like I said, if I didn't believe in what this was in front of us or what the consideration was, I sure as heck wouldn't be wasting your time saying, I think this is something you got to look at. Because again, staff has, this many things to do and about this much time to do it all in. And if something shows up as well, that's an immediate no, of course, they're just going to move on to the next thing. So, again, I mean, to your point, I don't think it's perfect. Maybe the code could be tightened up so it's a little clearer. But again, it is what it is, I guess.
I'm just concerned if there ever comes one that we're like, no from the beginning. I just don't want this the whole favoritism thing. I'm just worried about that.
And I really like the fact, though, that you looked at the code and you went as much to the letter of the code as you could go. And that's appreciated when you're...
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, we expect you guys to follow that. Without a doubt.
Well, the vagueness of the code is a big problem, so just in general, as far as like...
Sometimes it's better to be vague.
Yeah, Danielle?
I hate to throw this out there, but there are also the bylaws that the council adopts or the council policies, and I think some of the other policies address, okay, you might consider a policy on how to sponsor things like this in the future. So rather than change their zoning code, you may want to just add another layer of the council policy on sponsorship of things like this.
A great suggestion.
Thank you, Danielle.
Well, does anyone want to discuss this more, or Dave, I think you did a good job?
I don't know if
Amy, well, bringing it up, and Amy, that you had some good points, so.
And again, the only thing, I don't want to beat this stuff, I would hesitate to just allow the word favoritism to hang out there, because from my perspective, it's not what this is about. From my perspective, it's good community development, good community planning, a great asset potentially for the community from where I sit.
So the question would be, is council on board with having staff take a look at this, give us some options? Okay. Would anyone else like to discuss anything with our long CDC meeting tonight under other items? Take that as a no. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ready to go into finance?
We have just like 2 minutes.
You can have until 4:15. Unless you're back soon. I did not get anywhere to pass out.
Yeah.
I know, you know, like,
So what do you say about yeah, that's the thing we went against them.
So obviously she's right here. I did. That little rim. Not you.
No, it's, you know, I mean, we've had probably 10 people, you know, in one really fell.
Red or steel. Something like that. How's things going?
Good.
Nobody, Pat didn't get tased. They were going to tase Pat Quinn at the,
then when I figured out that it was a problem,
she got tased. So he needs to get tased. Never know.
Reminds people like that.
Check the candy.
Okay, people, let's get started. Finance and administration, please. I can't do this. Anybody need yours? But listen.
Okay, everybody sit in this.
Let's get started. Finance and administration committee, Michelle, begin. Okay, Laura, would you like to talk to us about the 2015 employee benefit renewal, please?
Thank you very much. This big expenditure, one of our biggest expenditures every year as part of the annual budget process. Because we are a small group, we wait until the very last minute. We got renewal numbers from our medical carrier on October 20th, so we didn't have a whole lot of time to evaluate that. But I think what we wanted, what we've heard through our budget discussions and other conversations with the council in the last year or so was let's try to maintain a very comprehensive benefit package for the employees that's fair, reasonably priced, and balance that with salary and compensation. So we're pleased to be able to present to you tonight for consideration a benefit package which we think meets all of those goals. I can go through a lot of detail if you haven't had a chance to read this, or I can hit the high points. Basically, it would be the same package, essentially, as was offered in 2014. Aetna does, as we've gone through this transition to affordable care, we've seen our carrier, along with many other carriers, eliminating plans in the marketplace every year. Once again, they eliminated the plan that we bought in 2014, and so the plan that we put forward is their recommended replacement plan. It's interesting this year because it actually gets better. That's on, looks like this. It's numbered a tiny page 4 in your handout, but it shows you the current plan and the renewal plan, and it actually has some out-of-pocket benefits for the employees. So the only thing, what you see in the 15 renewal plan, anything that is green is better for the employees in 15 than it is in 14. So the only red item is something that is higher. The only place you see red on the plan renewal for 15 is a generic prescription copay.
Mine didn't come red and green.
I know, I'm like, where's the red and green?
No, mine didn't come red.
Mine came gray and green.
Gray and green or
Gray and green.
white? Where am I at? Am I finding it? Am I getting there?
What page?
There?
Yeah, up one.
Attachment 1.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry that didn't come across in color. So basically, we saw a decrease in out-of-pocket maximums. Deductibles stayed the same. Co-insurance actually increased out-of-network benefits and a variety of different things. So while there is a slight overall plan increase, and the employees would be paying a little bit more in monthly premium, their out-of-pocket expenses could go down just a little bit. So I think it balances out. The other jump that we looked at, the next kind of replacement option, jumped out-of-pocket maximums, really doubled and close to tripled out-of-pocket maximums for employees, which really felt very uncomfortable. So, yes.
How much more is it costing us this year versus last year?
If you look at on page
historical review.
It's the next to last page of the actual memo, historical review of the changes. Let me just go over there.
I know where your driver went.
He's coming back.
It's fired.
I don't know where the computer driver went.
So it's a total increase in plan cost of $50,000 over the 2014 plan cost. I don't know which way does it go up.
I don't know. I was just pushing buttons. I'm trying to figure it out.
I can take my job back.
Okay. Yes, that would be great. Yeah, don't ask me twice, right? So if you look at, 2015 proposed total, and this is medical, dental, vision,
Capers, KP&F, oh, no, actually, this is medical plan.
So that was a
Sorry.
28% increase?
No,
2015 benefits is a
7.3% increase.
Well, that's a percentage of personal.
So this is health and welfare. So this is medical, dental, vision, AD&D, and group term life. Okay, so it is $50,000 or 7.3% increase. If you look, that fluctuation from 2011, we've had some years of savings, we've had some years of increases. Trend in the industry is about 10% right now for groups of our size. So we beat the trend just a little bit.
When we did the budget, you anticipated these increases, and that was
yes. So
already
this
budgeted
is already budgeted in there. So our recommendation would be to renew a contract with Aetna, transitioning to this recommended PPO plan, maintain the cost sharing formula at 80% employer paid, 20% employee paid premium, maintain access to the wellness program, which would allow employees who successfully complete that to have a $30 a month premium discount in their wellness program. Renew the contract with Delta Dental. We saw no increase actually in dental overall. We do cost share in that plan as well, 80% employer, 20% employee. Maintaining our vision benefits through the VSP network administered by the standard. That has been 100% employer contribution. We actually get a better rate there if we can guarantee that employer contribution on the vision side. We provide a group term life insurance policy and accidental death and dismemberment for employees, and then we give them access that is 100% employer paid, then we give them access to supplemental life insurance as a voluntary benefit where they pay 100% of that premium. We would recommend continuing offering a 125 flexible spending plan with First Trust. The employees can set aside up to, the limits were just raised last week from $2,500 a year to $2,550 a year by the federal government. So they added $50 more that you can put in, and then it's up to $5,000 for dependent care on that side. So we still, what we save on the employer side in terms of taxes still outweighs what we pay in plan administration costs. We think that's a good benefit. Funding the Capers and KP&F retirement plans in accordance with state mandated rates, and then maintaining the quarterly contribution of 2% of earnings in the principal plan for non-KP&F employees. Last year we reduced that from 4% to 2% and took away the optional matching benefit. Again, because we're seeing Capers being funded on an actuarial basis. So our costs, the intent of that plan was to sort of equalize the employer contribution between KP&F and Capers. Capers is now moving us in that direction on their own. So again, if you go and look at the chart on the last page of the memo, so health and welfare benefits, retirement benefits, unemployment, FICA, workers' compensation are estimated at about $1.8 million. Total estimated salary costs of about 4.7, which takes us to the $6.5 million that was included in the 15 budget. So as we look at benefits as a percentage of total personnel costs, we're at about 28%, which is pretty standard. And we will look at, we did achieve some savings on the health and welfare benefits side to the tune of maybe $30,000 or $40,000. We will look at how we can maximize that within our total personnel costs, applying that to merit increases that would be available to employees. So happy to answer any other specific questions. We've provided the plan summaries, and also in this worksheet there is one table in the memo that shows you kind of that per payroll difference that the employees could anticipate, and it ranges for individual coverage from a low of $4.27 to a high of $12.89. So employees are going to see about a if you have family coverage, you would see about a $25 a month increase in what it costs to access benefits.
But their out-of-pocket's going to go down.
So their out-of-pocket is going to go down, yes.
Any other questions for Laura? If I recommend taking this to council?
Just quickly, can you clarify the difference between employee plus children and family?
Yes, so employee, so family would be spouse and children.
The other's
so
just employee plus children.
Correct.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
How do the employees like the plan? Are they satisfied with it? I mean, do you ever get any?
We don't get a lot of feedback on that. I think, you know, we try, if an employee will bring an issue to our attention, and we have access to the broker very directly, and we will try to get any of those questions answered. Nobody likes to pay for that health insurance, but it's, you know, I think our plans are pretty competitive in the marketplace.
Yeah, if it's any consolation, I mean, this is what I pay, but our out-of-pockets can go up to $15,000. So we have, you remember we were looking at that. Unfortunately, my corporate plan, the out-of-pockets go up that high.
The contributions we
Right. I mean, I get it. I mean, so it just seems like it's pretty competitive. Was the point I was trying to.
For sure.
Take it to council.
Yes.
Consent.
Yes,
Okay. All right. Consent. Laura, the Human Service Fund recommendations?
Each year, as part of our annual budget process, we allocate funds that go to the Human Services Fund. This is administered through United Community Services. They have a board that reviews and evaluates service providers who provide programs that target safety, basic needs of low-income residents, work support, access to health care. So each year, they take applications to their program, and then we tell them generally as we go through the budget process what our allocation would be. They take those contributions from the city, they allocate those among the applications that they receive, and then they let each council to take action to specifically review and approve the programs that are being funded. So what you have before you tonight is their fund recommendations report, and so you can see the programs and the amounts. You can see their grant amounts for the last 2 years, and there are no applicants that are new or dropped off of the list from what has been funded in the last couple of years. So they just like each participating community to specifically acknowledge or support those fund recommendations. And we budgeted $6,500, but our contribution that we committed to was $6,395 in 15 budget.
Any questions for Laura? Consent, or take it to council? Or consent? Okay. Number 3, our favorite, declaring surplus property.
Yep, surplus property. This is, and we have police cars that we moved forward with our leasing for the new police vehicles last month. And we now can declare those vehicles surplus so that as we bring the new vehicles online, they've been ordered. And as we bring those online, this will give us the ability to look at how we get the most value.
And it's so much.
Yeah, which, yeah, over at the community center in the adult lounge. If you've seen that, it's well loved.
Oh, okay.
So it was time, and that was included in the capital equipment replacement plan. So, yeah.
Any questions for Laura?
No.
Council?
Consent.
Council consent? Okay. All right, discussion item number 1, 2014 budget amendments.
Just wanted to kind of use this to signal, as you know, we kind of wait till the end of the year to look at if there's a need for us to do any statutory budget amendments. When we adopt the budget each year, we set maximum expenditure limits for each fund, and we can't exceed those without formally amending our budget and going through a public hearing process. We've identified 2 funds that we will need to increase the expenditure limit on, not because we've had unplanned expenditures, but because the timing of the payouts for the construction of the new outdoor pool, we didn't guess exactly how, right between 13 and 14, how the contractor would submit their pay estimates, and so we ended up with more in 14 than we budgeted for. And then we hadn't anticipated for the complete refunding of that 2009A issue, which was $15 million in refunding, $15 million out in refunding. So it's a complete wash in both instances, but we will need to formally amend the budgets. And so I just wanted to let you know those will be coming forward in December, and we will need to set a public hearing to do that. But nothing that wasn't accounted for or that has any bottom line impact on the 14 budget.
Any questions for Laura? Woo, look at that. We are almost done with this agenda.
We're doing good.
I think we're about fair play, right?
Right, so departmental priorities and work plan.
So this was the one that got punted, thank you, last week in lieu of Royals World Series Game 7.
Thank you.
We had no hard feelings or hurt feelings. What we really wanted to do, and again, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this evening, other than just with the transitions that we've had, and there are a lot of things that were included in the 15 budget that are going to be really critical, I think, with the comp plan update and some of the visioning processes as we move into 15 and the 15 budget and some of the decisions that we want to make. But we wanted to just have an opportunity to touch base, kind of go back and tie those to your council goals and objectives from your goal setting session, make sure we're all clear, we're all on the same path moving forward, and so we can really kind of get through the end of this year and really kick off 15. So what we tried to do is break out those goals from our strategic planning workshop in November of 2013 and tie those to things that we see in our departmental work plans coming up. So the first one, and we've tried to use little numbers. I don't know if those came across before in that one.
It did.
Okay, so I'll have to go back and double check. So we've tried to identify those and tie those to the numbers. The biggest one, I think, is the comprehensive plan update and the visioning update. There was $30,000 included in the 2015 budget for that project. Staff and primarily Martin had developed a proposed scope of work for that process, which we attached to the memo that you got for the work session. It kind of broke down how we would approach spending that $30,000 and maximizing that. In addition, there were separate funds included in the budget to do an update of the ETC Direction Finder survey. We had a meeting this week with folks from Direction Finder, and we'd like to really, I think that's an important first step in this process, is getting some of those survey results back to help kind of guide the discussions through the rest of that process. And then we talked yesterday about then doing a follow-up survey that would be the one included in the scope that Martin had proposed, so we could test. So we have an opportunity to get some Direction Finder results back and then test or get some additional feedback through that process, all within kind of the same budget. And we really, I think Martin would plan, if you're comfortable with kind of that game plan and the approach that was laid out in that, we'd like to begin to bring those contracts forward in December so that we are really ready to kick off that process in January. Martin, do you want to touch on further questions about that?
I don't think I have anything else to that.
Any questions? Do I have questions?
Do you?
Yeah, I do. So under the visioning and comprehensive plan update, so questions and tasks for the plan update. What is our community vision for the next 20 years? 20 years just seems like with the ever-changing economy and environment and everything that's going on, I think things seem to be changing a lot quicker than they used to in the past. And so is 20 years the right time frame? Is it a 15 year? Is it a 10 year? And is 20 years best practice?
20 years, well, there's many answers to that question, but yes, 20 years is typically the planning horizon that you look at when you do a lot of these plans. We are required by state law, or the planning commission is required to revisit and touch the comprehensive plan on an annual basis. They don't have to make any changes to it necessarily. They just have to read it and say, yeah, they've looked at it. But it does become dated after a few years, as with anything. So typically what you do a lot of times you see 20-year planning horizons, sometimes a little bit longer, but not generally not much shorter than that. You have what you call the aspirational goals, things that you want to get to, development you'd like to see over the next time, understanding that Rome doesn't get built in a day. So you start out again, long-term vision, but you do frequent touch points in between to adjust for things that may be changing.
And our last vision, what was the plan time frame for that?
Electricity.
20 years.
Yeah, it's pretty standard, and just to dovetail like with what Martin's saying, it's good to have like a long-range plan so that people aren't, pigeonholed into, well, 5 years we could do so much, or given the economy. Whereas 20 years you can actually say, what do you want the future of your city to look like? And then incrementally you'll revisit and adopt and make changes according to context of what's occurred and what's happened. But it is a best practice approach, pretty standard.
And then under what do we need to get there? There's just 2 items listed. can we like break those down into a little bit more, like, I don't know, common language maybe? So, I mean, land use development vision, are we talking about all land? Are we talking about commercial property land? Are we talking about, I mean, what are we talking about?
Well, land use, and the answer is yes again. Land use is development. What kind of, that impacts your zoning. What kind of development do you want to get in the future, and that's regulated. Comp plan is up here with sets the vision, and then the zoning implements that. So that's the land use, and then I think that bullet I paused. I couldn't pull it up because I don't have access to it on our website. I think it also talks about capital improvements.
It does, capital infrastructure, which is kind of a big term.
And that has to do with the investments that you make, the public investments that you make. There could be parks, there could be roads, there can be the complete streets, there can be trails, there can be city sidewalks, aquatic centers, and things like that. So again, you start out with a vision long term, and then you do a number of things through the zoning ordinances or through the budgeting, through the capital improvement programming process to get those implemented, funded, and built.
Okay. And then update census data, demographic and long-range population. So does that just go into the census people getting that information?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
We're not doing any census kind of stuff.
No. Okay. We have to, yeah. And what I have put down in the draft of a scope last week was some of the things that we'll be looking at. I think what's going to happen is as we start going to the public, we're going to hear different things. We're going to hear different things that we may have to update. So these are some of the starting questions that I think we'll start out with as soon as we get going. And those are some of the things. I know we're going to have to update our population growth forecast. I know we have to update the census numbers that we have. And you know, we have to ask the question.
Just in general in the plan?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
got it.
We've also done a lot of work in the last 6-7 years. We've done sustainability plans, we've done a housing plan, we've done a lot of work that needs to be updated. Okay.
And then prioritize and identify community support for improvement projects, including, so I know that at some point in time on the council we've talked about many of these items, and there's not been general support for these specific items. So I'm just a little concerned about these ones being called out.
Well, these are included currently in the comprehensive plan, which is why we need to, as we update that, we need to have that specific conversation about, are these still the priorities that they were when we last touched the comprehensive plan? Or do we need to reorganize or replace, right?
So how did these priorities come about in the development of that original plan? Because I would assume we didn't like put them out there. Was it a multiple choice or something?
Or? Different ways, and they were a result of most of them, if not all of them, public planning processes. Like the example, there's one, for example, it's a pretty major one, is bringing the intersection at Metcalf and Johnson Drive to grade, not with an overpass, and that's come from multiple public input or planning processes. It was important to many people to get that in there. So that's in our comp plan, and that's something that we strive towards. But that involves coordination with Overland Park, with KDOT. Ultimately, it would be expensive. At some point, we will have that question if we want to pursue that when that bridge is due for replacement. That may be in 5 years, maybe in 15. But that's the kind of question we'll be asking. Is this something that you, as a council, with the feedback from the community, is that something that you continue to pursue? And there's a lot of things like that we have in our plan.
So my concern is, I don't know who all the people were that was really important to all those people, if those people are still around or not around. And then I'm concerned that we might be leading people down to a finite set of choices instead of opening it up and kind of letting them tell us what they want through a set of questions, right? Versus it seems like at some point in time people cared about this, and that's why they got put on there. Again, I don't know if the same people care about it or not, but if this is kind of the list I have to choose from, you do maybe make
no, absolutely. But I think if you look at this list and then you look, for example, at our current 5-year capital improvement plan or community investment program, and then the resolution that we passed that said, and then there's a full another list of other things that this specific council has also identified, and so those all come back into the mix. So I don't think it's just this is the only list that exists in the comprehensive plan.
And then how do people tell us what they want? How about if they don't want any of that?
They can say that too. It's through public engagement. It's through charrettes. It's through public participation. You sit around tables and you say, what do you want the future of your community to look like in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years? These answers right here were through a visioning process, through residents. If they don't want it anymore, they can say that. They can say whatever they want. But these were responses that the residents said, this is important. These are things we want to work with.
And I don't discount that, but it's all in how you phrase the question.
Yes,
and you can phrase the question to get the response you want.
Right, and that's true. And, you know, to that point, there's also, you know, organizations and entities that do this for a living, facilitate these processes. And we chose very intentionally to do this in-house. So you have to keep that in mind in context. So we have people that are very talented and we have resources, but just
right,
just
and
to
that's
your
just,
point.
I mean, yeah, and that's why I'm asking these questions, because I'm just going to say my impression of this is that it feels, and this is just my impression, right? It feels that it has an end in mind to get it, you know, looking for specific answers and specific responses. So, and I totally get what you're saying, Stephen. I was on board with not spending a ton of money on this. I get that constraint. I'm just saying that this, I'm just.
Yeah. Well, I think that's part of why it's important for us to have this discussion, because we're taking a different approach to updating the comp plan and going through this process than we have in the last several years. And because I think whether we do it in-house or out-of-house, we need to be very clear and very specific and make sure we're engaged with you about what's a valid process. I mean, I don't want to start down a path and solicit input and come back to you and then have you say, well, that it didn't work, we didn't ask the right questions, you know, so we need to be very engaged and probably more closely doing this in-house. Than we have been in the past. I look at this and say, this was just to say, this is the starting point. These are the things that exist in the current comp plan. So we've got to start there, but then there's a whole other world that opens up. And so we're going to be engaged in how do we phrase the questions? You know, how do we ask the questions? What are those things? But I think that's first and foremost. And I mean, I think we all are going into this process with an understanding of kind of how we might need to answer.
Yeah, if I may, your feeling is very intentional. It's intentional that there's a direction that the community is going towards, because the community decided through public engagement, through a visioning process on what they want the future community to look like. And then it's through these processes that we update that information. And we say, is this still what you want? And if they say no, scrap it, throw it out the window, we listen, and we adjust. They say, yeah, this is how we want to move forward, and we want to do X, Y, and Z, and we listen and we adjust. So the fact that you're feeling, hey, it feels like we're moving towards this specific direction, that's extremely intentional through the process that we did years ago. It's now somewhat outdated.
And once also to add, and I think we mentioned this already, once we come up with the questions, and we're not going to be doing this by ourselves, we're going to be doing this with the input of many people. We're going to ask those questions in a number of different ways. We're going to have our normal conventional public meetings and open houses and boards, and people come in with little dots and put the dots on the map and what have you. We're also looking at, and this is what Laura talked about, coming back before you in a future meeting with some agenda, with some action items. We'll come back, we'll try to tap into a social media piece too, to try to get feedback from those that wouldn't attend a public meeting. And we're also looking at piggybacking this from the direction finder survey and having some statistically valid questions to get asked through a survey. So we're going to try to ask the same question in different ways so that we get as broad a possible response from your constituents. Because the more you do that, the more weight and value there is to your plan moving forward. Ultimately, you have to believe that we ask the right questions and that the answers that we're getting represent your community as a whole. So that's what we're trying to put together here and bring before you in the next month or so.
Are you going to do a mailer? Besides online surveys and social medias and public meetings, I mean, are you going to do something that everybody can participate in?
We're going to have our open houses. We're going to have we're gonna have and that's what I call the normal, the conventional feedback style. We're going to have public meetings. And then on top of that, we're gonna do the surveys, social media, things like that.
Yeah, because there's a lot of people who don't do the surveys on the social media, who don't get on the computers, who like Susie's little mission magazine. That's the way they interact with their community, and it's not the same as holding a public meeting. How much participation do you actually get?
We've gotten a lot. On the ones where we had round tables, it's
Have
been
ya?
packed.
Yeah.
Because they want to weigh in, you know, we get in the weeds with the how to do it, like funding or who does it, but they want to give the what. What do you want to see out there?
When's the last time that we did this, Jeff?
Before the transportation utility fee?
2010 was probably our last really extensive, as part of the talking about transportation funding and all that. We haven't done really.
But it was packed, wasn't it?
Well, that was packed, but that was a different issue. That was a little bit more controversial, I think, than, well, when did you guys come up with this envisioning plan for Johnson Drive? Was that part of the visioning committee for that?
I mean, all the way back before, there were high Palma studies, there was a downtown vision plan, there was an East Gateway plan, there was a West Gateway plan.
Was that when you did the East Gateway?
And those were created because of a visioning effort?
Yes. Those were task forces. I mean, Dave, I think you chaired the East Gateway, which was a joint effort, and it included the cities of Fairway and Roland Park talking about development on that end of town. Susie, I think you co-chaired the West Gateway plan. Connie did. And Connie did that piece. I don't think there were council co-chairs, but we had a consultant who did the Rock Creek downtown vision study.
So how much, what was the cost on this for somebody to do this, instead of us taking it not in-house? Was it
Probably
$100,000?
$150,000.
It's not commercial.
Yeah.
I know it's not like this before.
And the savings that we can get, and we think we can get there, this requires a lot of work on our side, is we will do the project management, and we're gonna pick our subs. We pick our subs. And we'll do the project management, and we think we can get that done with the amount of funds that have been set aside for next year.
We'll say this, I think it's an important conversation to have, because if you question the methodology going into this, then you're not going to trust the results that come out of it. And what I will say is that my time on the council, kind of the three consistent things that have always come back is fix our roads, encourage responsible redevelopment, and give our seniors a place to age in place, in so many words. But you got to believe in the visioning. You got to believe in the process that we use, whether it's in-house or otherwise. And I think it's great that we have such a committed staff that they're willing to help us save $150,000+ to do this. But, whatever, if it's not in this meeting, Amy, or anybody else around this table, then it needs to be a sidebar, because you got to get comfortable with the methodology. Because if you're not comfortable with the methodology, you're not going to believe in the results, and then you won't have the courage to use those results to, spend money and adopt public policy to put that in motion.
Yeah, which is why we wanted to start talking about it now, and not in January when we're ready to kick it off, because there's a lot of thought, and this is a very, very, very important process. So we want that time for you to think about, ask questions, tweak, suggest, all those things, because it's an investment of all of our time, and we're asking our residents to invest a lot of their time in the process as well. So
is part of the process when we're having these meetings and asking people for input, do we also ask them, we know you like this amenity, you just said, oh, you talked about that amenity, this amenity, very nice. Do we also have a question there, are you willing to pay higher taxes for these amenities, for that amenity, this specific, or that specific?
Can be done.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can be done?
Yeah. I mean, we can ask a number of things, and it's many different ways of doing this.
Has that historically been done?
That's what I was wondering, was it done before?
We have asked, how are you willing to, what would you be willing to pay for certain services? And I think this is something that as we had the conversation, we did a direction finder survey in 2007, and we did an update in 2011. And that fed into a lot of these other vision plans. One of the things that, in talking with ETC yesterday, they're doing a lot of work in sort of best practices and trying to marry up the direction finder survey, which tells us about our basic core service delivery, but also allows us to benchmark ourselves against other communities, because most cities in Johnson County and the metropolitan area are doing direction finders, so we can kind of see how we stack up not only with our residents, but how we compare in other places. But then we have a park master plan that's moving forward, which would have a survey component along with this comp plan, and keeping those tied together more closely than maybe they have in the past allows us, again, maybe by doing a two-step survey process within the same budget that we've established, gives us an opportunity to ask some questions on the first go-around, have a chance to process those, and then say, I think what was our discussion yesterday? What are the important questions, or what are the interesting questions?
Important and interesting questions.
And we can maybe then dig a little bit deeper. If there's something that we want to pursue, or that maybe rises to the top, we have an opportunity to ask some follow-up questions with that through the process. And we still get you this information as you're making decisions in the budget.
But it's really important to have a cross-section of the city involved in this, because you've got a whole segment of people that are really passionate about trails, and you've got another segment that is anti-trail. Well, you kind of need all those thoughts and processes put together so you can listen intelligently and try and figure out the best way to go.
Well, and I listened to the visioning committee on Johnson Drive, and they were really interesting, and they were really passionate about it, but they weren't involved with any of the money. It was just a vision of what they would like to see. It was like a wish list, and it was wonderful. But then it comes to us, and we have to pay for it, and we have to figure out how to do it. They didn't get down in the minutia of that. That wasn't their goal, or that wasn't their task. And it was a very select few on a task force. It wasn't the community as a whole, even though we took it through the public hearings and, you know.
Well, the other thing that you can do is, as you gather that feedback and as you do your annual budget process each year, is, you know, as things come up, you can begin to ask questions, or you can begin to structure your public input sessions in your budget process to be more specific as you get to that point. You know, maybe somebody can't give you an answer when it's 5 or 10 years out. But as you go through the annual budget process and we do some of that 5-year forecasting, or we talk about those, you know, in priorities in relationship, we can begin to connect those dots as well.
Any other questions for Laura about the departmental priorities?
Let me just touch on the other things. So Johnson Drive Task Force, there were several things in here. The Johnson Drive Task Force will be kicking off in January, co-chaired by Debbie Crane and Stephen Lucas. Really looking at how can we continue to build on the momentum that we've made with the infrastructure investment on Johnson Drive, and what can we continue to do to support that. So there are many of your goals and objectives from here that I think we can tie very nicely to that process. Evaluation and assessment of communities for all ages checklist, we had that on our agenda back in October. Mark received a grant that will allow them to help. One of the things we talked about back in October, you may remember, is taking that checklist and having a conversation within our departments about what are we already doing, what might be feasible, and we're going to get the technical assistance for no cost to us of using Mark to go through that process. Going through that at the same time we're doing some of this allows us to then figure out how we plug those things into the conversations that we're having through the visioning. Parks and Recreation Master Plan, and there's actually an interview panel for the consultant teams that is meeting on Monday. We have 4 proposals, and then we'll be bringing that forward for your consideration at the December meeting, and then looking at continued process improvements for development and management of the 5-year CIP. In addition, some things to kind of think about that I've heard that weren't maybe specifically listed on here. We talked about kind of a sign code review. I think we talked about in the budget plan, or the 2015 budget, really getting serious about City Hall facility maintenance plan and things that need to happen at this building, whether that's the roof. The roof replacement is budgeted in 15. I think ward and redistricting issue needs to come back at some point in 2015. Continued discussions around our property maintenance and code enforcement, and some of the economic development strategies, neighborhood revitalization, and then just general economic development strategies. So those weren't specifically in here, but those are other things that we've heard as kind of priorities and things that we'll continue to weave into our work going forward.
Thank you, Laura. Any other questions? Well, I think we'll close finance and administration, and how do things?
Wait, let me ask
Oh,
you,
sorry.
I want to talk tonight about,
Myself.
you already want me.
Yeah, okay, sorry about that. Really prepared. Yes, Glenn?
I actually just want to make sure you all realize that the next time you meet, Johnson Drive is going to be open.
Very nice little card.
You just jinxed us all.
And the other thing I'm going to pass around, we've had some conversations as I've been talking with you all individually, and thank you for that time, is this is kind of a handout. One thing we talked about is we didn't have something to help us promote people who might be interested in serving in volunteer capacities, what our boards and commissions were about. So we developed this. This is a draft, so take it, look at it.
And are we going to put it in Mission Magazine?
Not this issue, but we could.
Excellent.
We're also going to be making some adjustments to the website so we incorporate some of this. But our goal is to really just sort of give purpose, make it look a little bit more fun. So if you have any feedback, just send it back to either Glen or I.
I think it'd be a great part to put in the Mission Magazine.
Or we could do it
like
well,
once
we
a
could do
year.
it in
Susie's little magazine.
Yeah, it could be a page in the newsletter.
The more participation, the better.
Okay, can I just make a comment? November passes fast. Everybody knows it's a quick month.
I've got socks.
White socks and canned goods. I got a call today, or last week I got a call from Crestview Elementary School in Marion asking if we could please help them. I know it's really tough when you start going outside of the mission, but they have a lot of families that need some help. So right now we have 52 families for Thanksgiving. So I know canned goods are on sale for 59 cents in many places. So if you would go pick up a dozen, that would be wonderful, and take them to the boxes down at City Hall. And socks, we also need socks too. So if you will please put that on your list, because it'll be the end of November before we know it, and then you start Christmas families.
I got your socks.
Good. I got a call today from Bickford, and they are giving us 10 turkeys for Thanksgiving, so that's the old folks' home.
It's Trey's fault.
They're giving us turkeys.
It's Trey's fault. That's what we're just going to say. It's Trey's fault.
So anybody that you know of that you can get on board or challenge your staff or your employees at work or something, and tell them you'd like some white socks and some canned goods, that would be great. And Uplift comes the 20th, so clean your closets.
I cleaned them.
We're going to come too.
Marcy's been cleaning hers.
I got 7 bags.
Community center parking lot.
Somebody took a little serious focus. They'll have a truck parked up there.
Community center.
Right north of the community center.
We'll have an uplift truck there. You drive up, and the police will be more than happy to unload your car for you. And if you're really
What day is that again?
The 20th. From
Same
7 o'clock in the morning till noon.
You'll be gone, Amy.
If you want to drop your items off early, we'll get them to the uplift truck for you.
And I'm sure Christy has a room somewhere.
I'm sure I do.
That we can put them in somewhere.
Sure.
Her house. Well, candles, books, blankets, pillows, sheets, anything like that.
Okay. Anybody else?
Just one thing, and I asked you earlier, is it possible to get an email that shows what we're doing on the 14th through the whole day? And maybe just be in the morning, and maybe afternoon, and maybe evening?
Is that in the city administrator report?
I think the invite has got some up to that.
That's what that is?
That's
Okay.
just the evening. I think it's just the evening, 5:30 to 7:30.
I'd be happy to do it in the morning. Okay.
5:30 to 7.
What are we doing in Melange?
Well, Emily, what are we doing at Melange?
What are we doing?
We're toasting the completion of a really successful project.
Are we going to have
We're having a
orders,
party.
heavy orders?
Yes.
Party?
Yes.
A party.
It's a cocktail party, a chance to gather with business owners and just take a deep breath. And so it's only from 5:30 to 7. It's very casual, but we'll have some snacks.
So not black tie.
No. Yeah, casual. Yeah. And then there's just a dance party following. There's a dance lesson that they'll normally always have on their Friday, and a dance party that they would always have anyway, and they're welcoming us in and letting us party.
And the clock dedication is at what, 11:30?
11:30.
11:30. Does anybody else?
Oh, I do want one. I do want one.
How's Dr. Coleman?
Dr. Hellman was, he's at the Overland Park Dance Center still, and he had In the wheelchair, he's still 2 weeks to walk, but he's gaining some color and was dressed today in a wheelchair.
Is he on meters?
We don't know. We don't know. I think they're taking it day by day.
What kind of super cool shopping things are going to be going on during this?
If you look at that little flyer, and at the bottom there's a website address. Thanks to Springboard Creative. Everything is listed there. But I can say there are open houses, live music at several events. We hope there will be artists on the sidewalk. There's sales and specials at many of the stores, and then some are having kind of, the next level up in terms of refreshments and live music and festivities. Closed? No. It's just it's a shopping day. It's a make sure you're down there.
Is this going out to the greater Kansas City area?
Yes, we're really pushing the media and the social media, both the news and social media. Next week will be our hard push.
Awesome. Great job, guys.
We're all going, right?
Thank you, Kevin. Too.
And Saturday, there's a big open house at Springboard Creative. We'll have great food, some drinks. You can't walk outside of the building with them, but you are welcome to come in and try out our bar.
Saturday the 15th.
It's kind of like I just go down and explore. Who knows what you'll find, but it'll be fun and festive, and you meet everybody down there. Cool.
And come in, you get a swag bag.
Yeah, the first 100. The first 100.
We start at 10 on Saturday.
It's a 9 a.m. event on Friday morning. It's a swag bag, and it's chock full of really good things.
Oh,
chock. Don't miss it.
Is there chocolate in there? Or
not
yet.
Chocolate. But now we said something, we'll get some chocolate.
We'll have chocolate at our open house.
All right.
You know where to come.
Andre?
No. October Halloween candy.
Thank you so much, Kathy.
Thank you, guys.
Really nice job.
Susie, if I run out and get my socks, you
Yeah, this is a short order. I'm holding everybody up. Oh, I know. I have it polo, but actually one of these. Did it order a long sleeve? Yeah.
have one, because I have another one that's a white denim. I got the white in there for this section.
Always
I think I want this stretchy one.
An email today, and I said, okay.
I'm leaving Rivarola in the evening, so if I, get back, it's fine. I'll just lock it up and do all the first thing in the
Is this Martin's? Is this yours or Martin's?